everybody, welcome to WTF Hammer Underworlds. So today's going to be my first warband balancing video for Season 3, that is, looking at Grashrak's Despoilers, which I just reviewed, and you can find the link to that video in the description. But these 4 points basically summarize the conclusions that I made in that review, which is that they have a difficult to achieve inspire condition, which requires them to be effective at aggression, and honestly they're not very effective at it, especially when they're uninspired. They also unfortunately have many low wound units and they have low defense, so they die easily. But I mean, it's not a complete negative, because sort of like Garrick's Reavers, they could benefit from losing fighters and they could benefit from their guys getting wounded as well. And you know, on a positive note though, these guys definitely are very versatile. They have good flex options available to them. They have access to hunters. They have a spellcaster, although their spell game is weak. And they also do have strong cards in general. Not their fighter cards, obviously, but they have strong objective cards and they have pretty good power cards as well, which, you know, help promote this this versatile playstyle. So I'd given this warband a ranking of A, which, you know, is kind of in the general vicinity of where I've been trying to balance warbands around. Although these guys are definitely a low A, so they definitely do need some amount of boosting. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to provide some recommendations to how they could be tweaked. And yes, I realize that none of these ideas are ever going to be adopted by Games Workshop. They made it very clear now that they don't want to support older content. And, you know, I put Beastgrave into that department now because they keep rolling forward, which is fine, but it's a bit of a bummer. But mostly I just do this for fun and for house rule purposes. So how am I going to be tweaking these guys? Well, I'm going to do what I always do, which is to recommend some errata suggestions, which is to recommend some errata that could be created to affect the existing rules for this warband to make them a little bit stronger, as well as to recommend a few new faction-specific cards, which I'll explain a bit more in detail in a minute. So starting with the errata, my first recommendation is just that they get some fighter card errata, and this one might be a bit controversial, but I actually recommend that they create a new spell attack actions unique to Grashrak that could be called Touch of Chaos. That would work something like this. A range 1 attack that is successful on channels, so that's pretty high accuracy, and that does 3 damage. So it would give him a very powerful melee spell attack action, which wouldn't be that powerful, or rather accurate, until he has inspired, because he'd only be getting 1 dice as a level 1 wizard until he's inspired, then he gets 2 dice, which makes this Touch of Chaos a lot more dangerous. And my justification here with this little spelling mistake is that their spell game is weak. They have a really bad spell game. Grashrak is not a good caster, does not have access to a lot of good spells, and they basically suck at killing, which makes it very hard for them to inspire. So it could at least give them a second attack that does 3 damage, although not necessarily with the highest odds unless you have power cards to support the accuracy. That could help them take a guy out of action and actually inspire this warband. It would provide a substantial spell game increase as well that would help these guys to kill, which are really their 2 holes. They can't kill and they can't cast spells, so this would accommodate both of those shortcomings in a way that I feel is not abusive. Next, I have some power card errata suggestions, specifically that devolve require only 1 focus to cast. So usually it requires a crit, which is just unrealistic. Like, it's never going to get casted by Grashrak. No one's putting this in their deck. If it costed a focus to cast, it would actually be doable, although not super likely when he's uninspired, but when he's inspired, the odds become pretty decent. It would allow Grashrak to actually cause some damage to a unit from range with a spell, improving their spell game. So my justification here is that their spell game is weak. I've mentioned it before. This would provide them with a bit more spell capability without being overpowering, because this card definitely is not overpowered. And that actually does it for my errata suggestion. So nothing huge. I mean, besides that spell attack action, which is pretty significant, I think, but you know, it is balanced out by the fact that he only has 1. It is balanced out by the fact that he's only a level 1 wizard when he's uninspired. And then devolve, of course, just costing 1 focus to cast instead of a crit, because that makes it completely useless. Next, let's look at the new faction-specific cards, and I'm going to quickly just give my justification as to how to include faction-specific cards. So my justification for Seasons 1 and 2 was that the warbands did not have play out of the box decks. They didn't have valid decks. They usually had 10 objective cards or something like that. So I would just recommend enough cards to make it so that they had valid decks, which always came out to having 12 objective cards, 11 gambit cards, and 11 upgrade cards, just how it ended up working out. These guys have 12 objective cards and only 10 gambit, 10 upgrades. So just for the sake of consistency, for the sake of equality, so that every warband, you know, the ones that I've reviewed and these new ones that I'm reviewing and balancing, finish off with the same number of cards total, I'd recommend that these guys get one new upgrade card and one new Gambit card to provide minor tweaks, nothing crazy. So what are my recommendations? Well, first, I would actually recommend these guys get a new spell, because like I said, their spell game is weak. It would help them become more versatile, give these guys a bit more options when you're deck building. What is this third semi-useful spell? It would be a health draining card called Seeping Taint, which I just made up, and it would be phrased like this. It would cost 2 channel to cast, which means Grashrak wouldn't even be able to cast it until he's inspired. But if he does cast it, he chooses an enemy fighter adjacent to a friendly fighter within 5 hexes of the caster, so there's a bit of a difficult condition to achieve there. And then that enemy fighter would lose 1 wound, and the friendly fighter adjacent to that fighter would receive 1 wound. So do a damage while healing an ally, so you'd have to have an ally next to an enemy within 5 hexes, and then Grashrak would have to be inspired in order to pull this off. So definitely are some conditions there, but it is a pretty awesome spell if those conditions are satisfied. Justification is that it provides circumstantial damage with a healing effect, and it makes this warband slightly more spell capable, which is what I've been gearing this balancing video towards doing. And my final suggestion would be an upgrade card, a way to supplement this warband's defense, because their defense is garbage. And I would just recommend a faction-specific spectral armor that can be called Primal Swiftness, so nothing crazy, nothing that breaks the bank. Just a +1 defense to guys who have dodge characteristics, so it can't even apply to Draknar. Justification here is that it would provide some much-needed potential defense, because these guys have virtually no defense. And especially since I'm giving Grashrak and his spell casting capabilities a boost, it'd be nice to have him be a little bit more survivable. And like I mentioned, also not too overpowering. Still keeps him in that A rank range, in my opinion. And that does it. So errata are summarized above. My new faction-specific card recommendations would be a new Gambit card just to match the other warbands that I've balanced, called Seeping Taint, which is a new health draining card, and a new upgrade card, specifically a faction-specific spectral armor that can be called Primal Swiftness. So that does it for this video. If you guys have any thoughts or suggestions, please comment below. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'm going to keep rolling through Beastgrave week to week, maybe a bit faster if I have the time. And anyway, next week I'm going to be covering Skaith's Wild Hunt. Hope you enjoyed and have a nice day.